Imagine a massive container ship, right? It's loaded with like $50 million worth of high-end electronics, and it gets caught in this massive storm and just sinks straight to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
Oh, a total catastrophic loss.
Right, a total disaster. And the immediate question is, well, who actually takes the financial hit for that?
Yeah, people usually assume it's the shipping company, right?
Yeah.
Or, maybe the buyer who is just sitting there waiting for the goods.
Exactly. But the real answer, it doesn't actually depend on the ship's captain or the weather or even the salvage crew. It depends entirely on this single piece of paper, signed months ago, sitting in some filing cabinet halfway across the world.
It really does. I mean, the physical movement of those giant steel boxes, that's what grabs the headlines, right?
Mm.
But the invisible architecture that actually dictates every single outcome is the paperwork.
Yeah.
That piece of paper you mentioned is basically the central nervous system of global trade. I mean, without it, the physical machine it grinds to a completely chaotic halt.
It's so true. Well, welcome to another deep dive, everyone. Today, we are zooming in on exactly that invisible architecture.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It is. We're basing this on our stack of sources today, specifically looking at transportation administration. And we are going to decode how these hidden gears of logistics actually turn.
And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, administration isn't just bureaucracy. It really isn't. It's this critical control layer that ensures the right goods get to the right place safely and without bleeding money at every single handoff.
Right. And for you listening, whether you're, navigating a complex business environment, managing a project, or you just really want to understand why things cost what they cost at the store, grasping these administrative levers is like your ultimate shortcut to seeing the matrix.
Absolutely. Because the reality is the people who control the information flow, they ultimately control the physical flow. The goods they cannot move until the information moves first.
Okay, so going back to our sunken ship full of electronics, how does a piece of paper actually decide who absorbs a $50 million loss?
Well, it really comes down to the foundational documents of transportation, and that starts with the terms of sale.
Right, the terms of sale.
Yeah. In international trade, these terms dictate precisely when and where the transfer of risk happens, like the exact moment.
So like a literal line in the sand.
Exactly. If the contract says the liability transfers the moment the container is, say, loaded over the rail of the ship at the origin port,
Okay.
then the buyer, the importer, they take the hit when it sinks in the middle of the ocean.
Wow.
But if the terms say liability doesn't transfer until it physically hits the destination port, well, then the exporter takes the hit.
Which means someone's balance sheet is completely destroyed unless they have, serious insurance.
Precisely. And this ties heavily into the financial risk of just getting paid at all, right?
Okay.
I mean, exporters often want to offer what's called an open account to build trust.
Like, hey, here's the stuff, pay me later kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Basically shipping the goods and saying, pay me in 30 days.
Yeah.
But to manage the massive risk of the importer going bankrupt or just defaulting, the exporter will purchase credit insurance policies. So the paperwork literally protects the physical movement.
Okay, let's unpack this because the documents themselves get incredibly specific here. I was looking through the sources at the bill of lading, the BL.
Right, the BL. Crucial document.
Yeah, and they draw this really hard line between a master bill of lading and a house bill of lading. And to make sense of this, I was actually thinking about real estate.
So that's an interesting angle.
Is a master bill of lading essentially like the actual deed to a house, while a house bill of lading is more like a sublease agreement?
That is a phenomenal way to look at it. Let's trace that analogy.
Okay.
So a master bill of lading, or MBL, that is issued by the actual vessel owners. The massive steamship lines that actually own the boats.
Right, the folks with the actual heavy machinery.
Exactly. It is the highest level document. It serves as the receipt for the cargo, and it acts as evidence of the contract of carriage. But its real power, and this goes back to your property deed analogy, is that it conveys legal title to the goods.
Title. So ownership.
Yes. It is a negotiable instrument.
Wait, really? So because it's a negotiable instrument, I can actually leverage it, physically?
You can. You can literally take a physical master bill of lading to a financial institution and use it as collateral to obtain a loan or a line of credit.
That is wild. Explain how a bank actually underwrites that, though. How do they issue a loan based on, a shipping container currently floating somewhere near Hawaii?
Because the bank knows that whoever holds that physical MBL legally owns the cargo, period.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if you default on your loan, the bank literally just takes possession of those 10,000 laptops when they arrive at the Port of Los Angeles. They can liquidate the cargo to recoup their money.
So that single piece of paper transforms a floating box into like a powerful liquid financial tool.
Exactly. It allows a business to maintain cash flow while their inventory is just locked up in transit for weeks at a time.
Okay, so if the MBL is the master deed, what is the house bill of lading? Who's issuing the sublease in this scenario?
Right, so the sublease, that's issued by a middleman, usually a freight forwarder or an NVOCC.
And an NVOCC is what exactly? Because the text uses the acronym but kind of just breezes right past it.
Yeah. It stands for Non-Vessel Operating Common Carrier.
Non-vessel operating, okay.
Yeah, think of them as high-volume travel agents for freight. They don't own any ships themselves.
Oh, okay.
Instead, they buy a massive block of space on a cargo ship at a huge wholesale discount, and then they resell that space to smaller companies.
So if I'm a small business, I don't need a whole shipping container. I just need like a quarter of one.
Right. You don't have enough stuff for a whole box. So the freight forwarder groups your pallets with shipments from, say, 3 other small businesses to fill one single container. The steamship line issues one master bill of lading to the freight forwarder for that whole box. Then the freight forwarder, acting like your property manager in this analogy, issues a house bill of lading to you and to the 3 other businesses.
So the HBL is non-negotiable then?
Exactly. You can't take an HBL to a bank. It is just your specific contract with the middleman. The bank, they only care about who holds the master deed.
That clarifies it perfectly. Okay, so legal ownership is sorted, but eventually someone actually has to pay for the truck or the ship to, actually move.
All right, the bill always comes due.
Exactly. And the sources highlight this crucial difference between a freight invoice and a proof of delivery, or POD.
Yeah, there are basically 2 sides of the payment coin. The freight invoice, it simply sets the charges. It says, hey, we moved this weight from origin to destination, and here's exactly what you owe us.
Right.
It also specifies if the bill is prepaid by the shipper or if it is collect, meaning the receiver pays upon arrival.
But just because you receive a bill doesn't necessarily mean the carrier actually did their job correctly, right?
Exactly, which is why the invoice alone is practically useless without the proof of delivery.
The POD.
Right, the POD is the carrier's ultimate record. It has to be signed by the person receiving the goods, confirming not just that it arrived on a specific date, but, and this is crucial, that it arrived in good, undamaged condition.
So like a signature with a scribbled note that says 3 boxes crushed is a major problem.
Oh, the massive problem.
Yeah.
In a well-run supply chain, the accounting department will absolutely not trigger the payment of that freight invoice until a quote-unquote clean POD is registered in the system.
Meaning no noted damage or shortages.
Exactly. The POD is essentially the administrative key that unlocks the money.
Okay, so we've got the liability nailed down, we've got the payment triggers set up, but once that freight actually leaves the dock, how do we stop it from just disappearing into the void?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Right. I mean, to a layperson, keeping an eye on cargo sounds pretty straightforward. You just track it. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the text is fiercely specific, that tracking and tracing are 2 totally distinct administrative functions. Like, they are not the same thing at all.
They are entirely different, both operationally and legally.
Yeah.
Tracking is the active, routine process of determining where a shipment is at any given moment. It's the baseline expectation today.
Right, like checking your pizza delivery app to see that the driver is, 3 blocks away.
Exactly like that. The goal of tracking is to feed real-time location data into your management software. If the data shows the truck is delayed by a massive snowstorm, you can actively manage that delay.
Right.
Tracing, on the other hand, is what happens when the tracking just stops.
So tracing is when you basically have to file a missing persons report for your cargo.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. Tracing only happens when a shipment has officially fallen off the radar and is presumed lost in this massive web of rail yards, ports, and warehouses.
Man, that sounds stressful.
It is. And what's fascinating here is how this actually gets incredibly interesting from a legal standpoint. Tracing shifts the burden of proof.
Oh, how so?
But while the shipper is the one who has to initiate the trace, they have to raise their hand and say, hey, we didn't get our stuff. And once they do that, the burden of responsibility shifts entirely onto the carrier.
The carrier has to find it.
Yes. The carrier must now dedicate resources to physically locate those missing goods and legally prove what happened to them.
That makes total sense. Now, Assuming we actually know where the freight is, transportation managers are constantly trying to optimize how it moves, right?
Sure.
Because sending half-empty trucks across the country is just a fast track to bankruptcy.
Oh, absolutely.
The administrative lever here is freight consolidation, but the sources divide this into reactive and proactive strategies.
Yeah, so consolidating freight basically just means grouping smaller shipments into one full truckload to save money.
Simple enough.
Right. But reactive consolidation is, frankly, it's just playing the hand you're dealt that day. The transportation team, they don't influence what orders are placed. They just sit at the loading dock and react to whatever comes out of the warehouse.
Okay.
They might group shipments by market area, like putting everything going to the Pacific Northwest on one truck, or they group by scheduled delivery, holding outbound freight until Thursday just so they can finally fill a trailer.
It sounds a bit chaotic, honestly. You're just waiting to see what the warehouse spits out and doing your best to play Tetris with the boxes on the dock.
It is chaotic,
Yeah.
which is why it's definitely not the ideal model. Proactive consolidation, that is where the real savings happen.
Okay.
But this requires the shippers, the carriers, and the receivers to actually collaborate in advance. You look at pre-order planning to dictate the timing and quantities before the goods are even manufactured, which guarantees full loads.
So you're planning the truck before the product even exists.
Exactly. And the pinnacle of this is multi-vendor consolidation.
Give me a concrete example of multi-vendor consolidation, because getting rival companies to coordinate and share a truck sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare to me.
It is notoriously difficult to set up, but the impact is undeniable. The classic industry example cited in the text involves Tupperware and Procter & Gamble.
Okay.
So think about what Tupperware ships, right?
Yeah.
Plastic containers. They take up a huge amount of physical space, but they are incredibly light.
Right.
In logistics terms, they cube out a trailer long before they hit the legal weight limit on the highway.
Right. The truck is physically packed to the ceiling, but it weighs almost nothing. You're essentially paying to ship air at that point.
Exactly. Now look at Procter & Gamble. They ship these dense, heavy laundry detergents and liquids. They hit the legal weight limit of the truck when the trailer is only like half full. They weigh out.
Ah, okay. I see exactly where this is going.
Right. By proactively collaborating, Tupperware and P&G combine their shipments into the exact same trailers. They put the heavy liquid on the bottom and the light plastics on the top. By doing this, they improve the truck's weight utilization from 55% to 85%.
That is massive.
And they save 17% in total lane costs.
That is brilliant. But, I mean, you cannot execute a maneuver like that by sending faxes or making phone calls. The technology stack synchronizing those two massive companies has to be totally flawless.
Oh, absolutely. And that technology is constantly evolving. For decades, the backbone of this administration has been EDI, electronic data interchange.
EDI.
Yeah, it's a standard that allows different companies' computer systems to talk to each other and just exchange paperless documents like purchase orders or advanced ship notices.
But EDI feels a bit rigid, doesn't it? I mean, it's like batch processing automated text messages back and forth at midnight. The text mentions a major shift toward API's application programming interfaces.
Yeah, EDI was revolutionary in its day because it eliminated manual data entry. But yes, it is older and it is batch-based.
Yeah.
APIs are the modern standard now. If EDI is an automated formatted text message, an API is a live two-way data stream. APIs allow these logistics networks to connect directly to the Internet of Things, or IoT.
So a physical sensor on a shipping container can just bypass the human element entirely and talk directly to the software.
Exactly. It can send real-time temperature, humidity, and precise GPS location data through an API directly into a centralized system known as a control tower.
A control tower.
Yeah, a control tower gives a company ultimate global visibility over their entire supply chain, usually on one single screen.
Which fundamentally changes the administrative response, I would imagine.
It does, yes.
Yeah.
Because of APIs and control towers, traditional tracing, our missing persons report, that is becoming really rare.
Because we just don't lose things anymore.
Exactly. Instead, the administration shifts to exception management and expediting.
Expediting meaning like paying a premium fee to speed up a shipment that's falling behind schedule.
Correct. If your API alerts you in real time that a container is stuck at a port, well, you don't trace it. You know exactly where it is.
Right.
But you now have the exact data needed to decide. Is it mathematically worth paying an expediting fee to pull it off the port and put on a faster truck? Or can our inventory levels absorb, say, a 3-day delay?
Okay, wait, I have to challenge something here. So what does this all mean? We are talking about these brilliant APIs, real-time IoT sensors, beaming data from the middle of the ocean, automated control towers.
Yeah.
If our technology is this flawless, why does the text spend so much time on freight pay and audit, this FP&A process? Because it says organizations regularly have to hire massive external auditing firms just to catch billing errors, and these firms take a percentage of the discrepancies they find. If the smart systems are so good, shouldn't they handle the math on an invoice too? Like, why are we paying a guy to find math errors on a PDF?
That is a highly perceptive pushback, really. You would think that knowing exactly where a truck is means knowing exactly what it costs.
Right.
But this raises an important question because there is a massive gap between physical logistics and financial logistics. The physical movement is largely automated now. But the contracts governing the payment for that movement, they are a labyrinth of human complexity. A carrier invoice is almost never just a flat fee.
So it's not just $1,000 to drive from Chicago to Dallas.
Not even close. You have a base rate, which fluctuates based on distance, weight, and the specific freight class of the goods.
Okay.
Then you layer on a fuel surcharge, which isn't static either. It's tied to an index of global oil markets, and it changes weekly. But the real chaos, and honestly the reason those external auditors make so much money, is accessorial charges.
Accessorial charges. So if the base rate just covers moving the box from point A to point B, I'm assuming carriers make their actual margin by nickel and diming the shipper for every little delay or special request?
You've just defined an accessorial charge perfectly. It is a fee for absolutely any service beyond the basic transport.
Like what?
Well, did the shipment require a refrigerated trailer? That's a surcharge. Did the driver have to actually help unload the pallets? That's a lumper fee.
A lumper fee, wow.
Yeah, and the biggest one is detention. Did the truck arrive at your warehouse, but your team was ready to unload, so the driver just sat in your parking lot for 3 hours?
Ah, so they charge you by the hour for making them wait.
Exactly. Or demurrage fees, which is when your shipping container sits at the port for too long before you go pick it up. Because these events happen dynamically in the real world, the APIs tracking the truck don't always perfectly sync with the carrier's billing department.
Which completely necessitates the freight pay and audit process.
Yes. FP&A is the administrative defense mechanism. It involves manually or programmatically examining carrier invoices to determine if the correct rates, discounts, fuel surcharges, and accessorials were actually applicable before you cut the check.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Companies do pre-audits before payment and post-audits after payment, just constantly hunting for discrepancies.
And if you are a massive retailer shipping 10,000 loads a week, doing that in-house is basically impossible, which is why you outsource to a third-party logistics provider, a 3PL, who has specialized software just to parse these contracts.
Exactly. You have to balance the overhead of an in-house accounting team versus a 3PL who takes a cut but has the scale to audit millions of complex transactions.
Right.
And auditing isn't just about overcharges either. It's also where you catch physical issues that lead to freight claims.
Right, which is when you ask for reimbursement for damaged cargo. But from what I read, a freight claim isn't like returning a defective sweater to a retail store.
Not at all. It is a highly rigid legal request for financial reimbursement. It's governed by maritime law or domestic transport laws like the Carmack Amendment.
Sounds serious.
Very. You have to prove using your original bill of lading and your proof of delivery that you gave the goods to the carrier in perfect condition and they arrived damaged. And there are strict contractual time limits. If you miss the filing window by even 1 day, you absorb the entire loss.
Wow, no room for error. The final piece of the puzzle the sources emphasize is that none of this administration happens in a vacuum. Your strategy completely changes depending on the macroeconomic environment. Specifically, whether you are operating in a tight market or a loose market.
Yeah, transportation is fundamentally governed by the laws of supply and demand. In a loose market, the broader economy might be cooling down, right? Consumers are buying less, which means fewer goods are moving. Suddenly, there is excess transportation capacity. Trucks are just sitting idle.
So in a loose market, the shipper holds all the leverage.
Absolutely. Because carriers are desperate to keep their trucks moving, rates drop. Shippers can negotiate fiercely. They can afford to send smaller, less-than-truckload shipments or choose slower transit times just to save cash because they know they can find a truck whenever they need one.
But when the economy is red hot,
Then you enter a tight market. Demand for goods outstrips the physical capacity of the transportation network. We've all seen historical examples of this recently. Remember when you couldn't secure a shipping container for less than $20,000 and ports were backed up for miles?
Oh, yeah, it was on the news every night.
Right. In a tight market, there simply aren't enough trucks, trains, or ships to go around.
So the carrier holds all the cards and the shipper loses their leverage.
Yes, rates skyrocket. In this environment, a shipper's administration has to become flawless. You have to proactively consolidate shipments because you literally can't afford to waste an inch of space.
Right.
You optimize your routing, and you rigorously manage your warehouse docks to ensure you never delay a driver. You essentially have to administer your supply chain so smoothly that you become what's called a shipper of choice, meaning carriers actually prefer to do business with you instead of your competitors.
Because if you make their drivers wait 3 hours, they just won't show up tomorrow. They'll go haul freight for someone else.
Exactly. In a tight market, administration isn't just about saving money. It is about ensuring your goods physically move at all.
Man, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, and it really completely shifts the perspective on how the world operates. We discovered that the physical movement of global trade is entirely chained to this invisible administrative machinery. The documentation, like the Master Bill of Lading, it isn't just a receipt, it's a legal mechanism that conveys ownership and acts as collateral for major bank loans.
And we explored how tracking and APIs have evolved. We've moved from reactive chaos to proactive consolidation, like that Tupperware and P&G alliance, using real-time data to just stop wasting space.
Right. And finally, we followed the money. We saw why the freight pay and audit process is so vital. Despite our advanced sensors, the human complexity of contracts and accessorial charges means organizations must vigorously defend their margins against billing errors, adapting their entire strategy based on whether the market is loose or tight.
Which, leaves us with a rather profound question to consider regarding the future of this whole field. We noted that APIs and real-time control towers are largely making the old process of tracing lost goods obsolete, right?
Yeah.
And we know that AI models are currently being trained to ingest those wildly complex carrier contracts to automate the auditing of accessorial charges.
So the technology is preparing to swallow the financial administration too.
It seems inevitable. So if these systems continue to advance, will the administration of transportation eventually become completely invisible? And if it does, are we genuinely ready to trust the financial arteries of global trade and the resolution of $50 million liabilities entirely to algorithms?
That is an incredible thought to leave on. As always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning how the world works behind the scenes. Look past the giant cargo ships and pay attention to the invisible architecture actually running the show. We'll catch you next time.